Would you like to be somebody who understands that John Milton essentially summoned the spirit of God, whatever that means, to write Paradise Lost, the poem that tries to sort of surpass the Bible? Then listen to the end of this video where I explain how he's essentially summoning the spirit that was there at the beginning of time, which turned chaos into order, and he is trying to use that spirit to now sort of fill in the gaps of the Bible and sort of rewrite the Bible, which is an absolute tour de force. I mean, unbelievable. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So just a little bit of some information. Paradise Lost is considered the greatest, or by some considered the greatest poem of English literature. Some people think it has sort of replaced the Bible, which is unbelievable. I mean, it's a big statement, let's put it like that. But how is he able to do this? He basically starts on an adventure in the beginning of the poem and then sort of describes how he goes through it, or sort of he's engaging in a call to adventure. And we're going to go through the lines today on where he summons the spirit and what he is saying. So first of all, he starts with, I've got my laptop here to look at the poem. Halfway through the first verse, and we're going to look at the first verse only today. So halfway through he writes, "Things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme." So what he's saying here is he's attempting to do something that nobody else has done before, which is rewrite the Bible in poem form. More specifically, rewrite Adam and Eve, the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, and the fall of man. Now, to call this an ambitious goal would be an understatement. Let's put it like that. Because the Bible is essentially the book that has outlived empires. It has outlived stone. It is archaic. It is ancient. Now you have some modern, well, relatively modern guy in the 1600s trying to rewrite it. You'd think this guy has lost his mind. But somehow, he achieves it. And let's try and figure out how. So he continues then to write, "And chiefly thou, O Spirit." So he's now calling upon the greatest spirit of them all, which is necessary, it seems, to emulate the heaviest task of human existence, that of turning chaos into order, darkness into light, what God essentially did in the first lines of the Bible, in the beginning of time. So, and that is like a divine kind of action. And now he is trying to do this again with his poem. He's trying to formulate the way of God and justify it to men. He's trying to describe what the concept of God essentially is, and human nature at its fundament, which is unbelievably difficult. So that's why he's calling upon this great spirit, because he needs it, essentially. Then he continues to say, so, "And chiefly thou, O Spirit, that dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure, instruct me, for thou knowest." So he's now saying, yeah, it's this spirit that, let's say, rewards the true noble heart and pure hearts more than the temples, the physical manifestations of the believers of God sort of erected, like the church, for example, as in building cathedrals. It's more, he's talking about the soul, the spirit that lies within the human itself. It is the non-physical spirit. It is not the manifestation of what people use the spirit to do, like the church, build the church. It is more, it's the pureness in the soul. That's what he is calling upon. Yeah. Now, and he says the Holy Spirit was there. He says, "Instruct me, for thou knowest, thou from the first was present." He's saying, he's calling upon the spirit that was there at the beginning of time. And this spirit is obviously an ancient thing that has seen everything. It's kind of this internal force. And I think what it is, it's like the unconscious mind of the human. He's trying to open up his consciousness to the unconscious mind of himself. And it is the birthplace of all things. It is like, it is that abyss that was there at the beginning of time and still lies sort of within the human psyche. It is the unconscious, really. That's what he is calling upon, because it is the wise thing. It has seen everything. It is there. It is the ancient thing that was there at the beginning of time. That's what he is really calling upon. So then he continues and says, so instruct me, for thou knowest, thou from the first wast present, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like satst brooding on the vast abyss, and madest it pregnant. And that's a lot. So, this is awesome. So this is a clear reference to the Holy Spirit. He's talking about this dove-like bird. The Holy Spirit tends to be represented as a dove, so as a bird. Then, it is the combination of this abyss, this darkness, with the Holy Spirit, with the bird, because the bird is like brooding on top of the abyss, so it is sort of, you know, when birds brood, they sit on their eggs to warm the eggs to then eventually hatch. So it is the bird, the Holy Spirit is sitting upon the abyss, in order for something to be created out of it. So it is the combination of the Holy Spirit and the abyss that then creates something. And that is also something very interesting, because the unconscious mind is considered something feminine, because it is the birthplace of thoughts, dreams, actions. It is the guiding force. It is like this abyss where things pop out of. It's like, you know, the feminine, you know, women give birth, they produce, you know, living, you know, potential. So that is why the unconscious mind is equated with something feminine. And now we have again this idea with brooding and pregnant. So the female, there's a clear female feminine theme going on here, which is super interesting. It is the birthplace of all the abyss. And then when you connect it with the Holy Spirit, which he is trying to call upon, he can create something. So he's trying to create this poem, Paradise Lost, and the unconscious mind, the abyss is within him. It's this unconsciousness, and he needs this Holy Spirit to bring him clarity and create something. He wants to mix it with the unconscious mind, let them assimilate, and then produce this poem. That's sort of what's going on, I think. And then he goes on to say, what in me is dark, illumine. What in me is dark, illumine. What is low, raise and support. So this darkness, it's again the same thing. It's the abyss, and he wants to throw light on it. The answer to Milton's questions and his adventure all lie within the darkness, but he needs to shed light on it to figure it out and articulate it, and that he needs the Holy Spirit for. So he needs to shine a light. And I think God is kind of like an abstraction of human potential, this divine, omnipotent, unlimited human potential, which rests in the unconscious mind, because we don't know what the limits to our psyche are, and the unconscious mind definitely not, because it's unconscious, but so we can't really see the bottom of the abyss. That's why it's like an abyss. You can't see the bottom. You don't know where the limit is. And God is like an abstraction of that, I think. And he is trying to map out that unconsciousness, that godlike, unlimited potential within him. And he says then, what is low, raise and support? So he's calling upon the Holy Spirit to help raise and support something to the height. He says that what is low, raise and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to men. So he's essentially trying to, well, this poem, Paradise Lost, is a theodicy, which is a piece of work that attempts to justify the ways of God in the face of, on the existence of evil. That's what it's trying to do. Because people obviously think, well, all this evil is going on. Why would in omnibenevolent, you know, an all-good God allow for evil to exist? That's the question, and this is trying to justify the existence of God despite this evil. Because people think, if evil exists, God doesn't exist. So he's trying to set that argument, but he needs the help of providence, which is sort of the interaction of God, the stepping in of God to do it. So again, he's calling upon the Holy Spirit here. And he's essentially trying to map out human nature, specifically the unconscious mind, which is this godlike, unlimited thing. But he needs to understand it first. So he needs guidance of God or the Holy Spirit himself, which is this eternal providence to help assert this argument. Now, the last line is, it says, the last two lines, I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to men. And that justify the ways of God to men, that's super interesting. So I think he's attempting to describe human nature to humans. I think God is, as I said, like an abstraction of human potential in some sense. But if you don't grasp that and you only see the image of God next to evil, then humans question the validity of God. They think like, what is this symbol God? Like, what is this concept? Like, it's just kind of rubbish, you know, it's garbage. Next to evil, like, it can't exist if evil exists. But that's just because they don't understand where the concept of God came from, and they don't see, where the concept of God came from. So Milton is trying to delineate the ways of God to men by trying to educate humans on their own nature, their own psychology, their own unconscious mind, so they can see how God was abstracted in the beginning and why it makes sense, the concept of God. That's, I think, what he's trying to do. So in conclusion, the first verse, or the second half of the first verse of Paradise Lost, is the moment where John Milton calls upon the Holy Spirit to basically support him and guide him in writing his poem that is attempting to justify the ways of God to men. And in order to do that, he needs to understand the unconscious mind, because God is like an abstraction of this unlimited potential of the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is obviously this dark, vast abyss with seemingly no bottom, you know, it's this unlimited space. But in order to grasp like what that is and articulate it into something orderly, he needs the Holy Spirit, which is a bird that broods and rests upon this dark abyss and then enables you to abstract something tangible out of it, something orderly and articulated. That's what he's trying to do. So please leave a comment below whether you think there are, I don't know, whether you understand what I'm saying in this video, whether it makes sense or not, whether you have any other ideas what John Milton is really trying to do with Paradise Lost, or especially the first verse. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening. Come on, mate!